Welcome to the October 21st regular meeting of the Village Board of Trustees. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
Flag. States of one nation. Trustee Levin?
Say present.
Present. Trustee Quezada?
Present.
Trustee Codman?
Present.
And Mayor Garrity.
Present.
We will begin with mayor's and trustees' announcements.
Thank you very much. Next Wednesday, please mark your calendar and join us at the Ossining Public Library. We're going to have a very special work session. It's going to be a community meeting, is what we're calling it, in the Bedars Theater. It starts at the regular time, but you are invited to arrive a half an hour early if you'd like to see the not even quite yet completed final cut of village historian Dana White's film about the history of Market Square. If you attended our meeting a few months ago, she gave her original slideshow presentation. She has created a whole program that she's working with Greg Cooper from the Village to get up on television on the website. But if you would like to be among the first to get to see it in its final form, we are hoping to be screening it at 7 o'clock next Wednesday at the Bedars Theater in the library. And then our meeting will begin at the regularly scheduled 7:30 in the library for what is officially our work session. We're calling it a community meeting, and the topic of discussion will be focused on our downtown, where we came from and where we're going. And we're going to be reporting back a lot of the information that we've gathered from the community workshops that we've been holding throughout various neighborhood groups and different organizations in the last few months. So I hope you'll join us in the library at 7:30 next Wednesday, the 28th, for our board meeting. We also look forward to, just the week after that, on November 2nd, I believe it is, we have someone new who will be joining our staff, the confidential secretary to the village manager, Joe Saratani, and we look forward to meeting him. I just got to meet him the other day. He'll be coming to us from Mount Kisco. He's got a lot of terrific experience, and we're going to be tapping into his skills and put him to work on an awful lot of projects day one. So the one other thing I will invite you to, also at our wonderful library in the theater, this Thursday is the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series offering. It is The Hudson, A River at Risk. It's actually a series of quite short films, which allows us to have a really rich discussion with our panel. Our panel includes our State Senator David Carlucci, Paul Gallet, who's the head of Riverkeeper, Manajo Green, who is the Environmental Action Director for Clearwater, and Sacha Spector, who is the Director of Conservation Science for Scenic Hudson. So if you have any interest whatsoever in the environmental impact of things like Indian Point, the transport of crude oil on our rail lines, the Tappan Zee Bridge, all of those things have a dramatic impact on our Hudson River. And that's what these films are going to be drawing attention to, and we'll be having a lively, I'm sure, discussion about that. So that's this Thursday, 6:30, at the Ossining Public Library. That's Thursday, October 22nd. Deputy Mayor Sada, have any announcements?
Yes, thank you. This Saturday, October 24th, from 7:30, actually, I'm sorry, from 7 o'clock to 10 p.m. is going to be the second time that Forest of Fear, the Haunted Hayride, is going to be placed in Cedar Lane Park. It has become a great event. A lot of actually organizations have been helping out. I know the PBA is one of them. They're doing a lot. Ambulance and some of the volunteers from the fire department as well are going to be helping out. There's going to be a really, really exciting event in there, and just to come out and support our community. So don't forget, October 24th, Cedar Lane Park from 7 o'clock to 10 p.m. Tickets are going to be starting selling about 6:45, and is only $5 per person. So come and enjoy. It's going to be a really nice event for the Ossining community.
Trustee Codman.
So this Friday night at the Bedars Theater in the library, really excited to have Garland Jeffries come to Ossining. And Garland Jeffries has been around for many, many years. I actually played him on the radio in Vermont back in the 80s, so certainly been around. But he's still going strong, and Really great music, rock and roll, reggae, nice blend. Should be really a good concert. There are still some tickets left. You can reach out through Facebook. If you check out Alan Marzelli, you can get tickets. But it is going to be a great show. Starts at 8 o'clock, a little bit later. Proceeds will go to the library. So part of Alan Marzelli's fine work bringing great musical artists to Ossining. So that's this Friday, Garland Jeffries, 8 o'clock. Hope to see you there. Thanks.
Are there any other announcements? Not saying anything. We'll move on to administrative reports, and we will begin with Village Manager Abraham Zambrano.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and trustees. Just wanted to make you aware of a few things. One of them, I want to give you an update on the microgrid project. It's going very well. The first set of deliverables was in fact sent to NYSERDA, and we're now working on the second set of deliverables, which includes also the inspection or the visit of all the buildings by members of the consultant group that we hired to put us through the process. We're working with the school district so that they can inspect the 3 locations that were part of the project, and also the village locations have already been visited, so that is also on the way. There's also, we're working closely with Con Edison to be able to, I guess, see how this could potentially work. And there's a mandatory meeting at the Con Edison offices in Rybrook this Friday, which I will be attending. Curious enough about, I had to sign an agreement that I will not disclose anything that was actually that is being discussed at that meeting. So I thought it was interesting. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight was, I know the mayor already mentioned, I already hired a confidential assistant to the managers. He's going to be starting on Monday, November 2nd. And as the mayor mentioned also, there are a lot of projects that Joe Serratani will be helping me with. So I'm looking forward to having him start. I also wanted to mention, and I know I have the last couple of meetings, the budget will be filed on November 4th. And we are scheduling the public hearing is scheduled for November the 18th, and we're still working on those numbers. As promised, I am doing everything I can, and we will be able to deliver you a budget within the tax cap. So it's a lot of work, but I think we're going to be able to do it. I think that the department head meetings have been going very well. We're looking into we kind of gone through pretty much line by line. But again, I'm anticipating being able to bring you a budget within the tax cap. So the other thing I wanted to mention too is that I know that at the last work session we discussed the Ossining Where Culture Lives. It's something that we're going to bring back to you at some point. I know that you were going to sleep on it. I hope you were able to, and I hope you can give us some direction. But I just wanted to make just a general comment. I think that the groups that are going to be involved, if we do go through with this campaign, I think that their input is certainly very valuable. But I just want to put out there now, I think that the Ossining Where Culture Lives, it's making a statement. So we can use it however we want to, and I think it can certainly be a very positive thing for Ossining. But we can discuss it, I think, over the next several months. Today we had an Office of Emergency Management meeting, and we discussed the implementation of the Nixle system. So that's going to be done within the next several weeks. Things are moving forward, and I think it's going to be a very positive tool for us to use, especially as the winter nears. The second topic that we discussed tonight also was the winter storm preparedness, and we are putting some things into place. We're going to be discussing some things with the staff, because I think that, again, the communication to the residents, I think, is going to be key in letting them know what we're doing. And that also, I want to get feedback from the residents as to what areas we need to pay more attention in. I know that the resources are limited, but I think we're going to try to maybe, try to make the winter less painful. Lastly, on tonight's agenda, we have a Resolution C, which is the adoption of introductory law number 7, which is this vehicle and traffic revision. And there's a portion of the local law that I just wanted to mention, which I know it has been talked about in the past, in the Walton Road East Side, specifically the 2 points that refer to no parking 58 feet north of Underhill, 200 feet south of Overton, and also a 20 feet north of Overton to Ellis Place. And the reason that that's there actually is just because of the traffic on that particular street actually coming out of onto Walton. We just need to have no parking in that area so that cars can make the right-hand turns easier, especially because there are many instances where there are buses coming out of the high school driveway. So I just wanted, again, to mention that because I'm not sure that it may have been clear to some members of the public in the past. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Corporation Counsel, Lorley Dixon.
Hi, good evening. My standard reminder to folks to remove signs from the fences and the light poles having to do with their very successful yard and garage sales. So they would double back. There are some organizational signs that are still out there too, I noticed. So I'm hoping in the next few days perhaps people will be doubling back to remove those items and put them in for recycling. I also wanted to call your attention just to remind the public on a few resolutions you have on your agenda, two of which have to do with recertifications of telecommunications facilities. These are both existing facilities, and every 5 years in accordance with the code, they must come back and produce professional sealed and signed reports in order to be granted the special use permit recertifications. Both of these have provided sufficient detailed information from, signed by licensed professionals. So you'll be moving forward. One of which has taken a while to get back to you. So the dates are not incorrect in that they one says 2015 and one says 2016 because they came to us a few months apart. So they needed to reflect the actual date of the original approval. So we did the math from those dates, and that's why they're in the resolutions in that way. I also wanted to thank you for spending as much time as you did on the local law number 7. This cleans up at least 4 areas of our on-street parking law and also clarifies for purposes of enforcement and for adjudication in the local court. So I thank you for the time, and I also thank you for doing the adjourned hearing in order to be able to get both sides of the story from the folks up at Van Cortlandt. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to have that cleaned up.
Captain Scott Craven.
Thank you. Good evening. The chief just wanted me to pass on a couple thoughts tonight. On October 17th, last Saturday, conducted a child seat installation thing down at Arcadian, along with the Croton PD and Buchanan PD. We did about a dozen installations and actually gave out a free seat to a family that really needed one. So it was pretty successful. I'd like to remind people that National Highway Traffic Safety Association says that 3/4 of all child seats are incorrectly installed. We do them for free. Call down to headquarters, make an appointment, come down and we'll take care, we'll install your car seat for you, or at the very least we'll check it out, make sure it's appropriately. In addition, the chief wanted me to point out that on October 31st at Halloween between 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning at the farmer's market, we'll be doing coffee with the cop. Thanks to the recreation department, we're going to have some face painting and some pumpkins, and it's an opportunity to enjoy coffee with the police, meet a couple of police officers, everything on your mind. That's on October 31st, 8 and 11 o'clock in the morning.
Looking forward to it.
Second Assistant Fire Chief Manny DeCruz.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening, Chief.
For the month of September, we responded to 47 calls. To date, we responded to 552 calls for the year. Our annual fire prevention program was held October 5th through the 9th. All the local schools were visited by the Fire Prevention Committee, and about 3,300 students from pre-K to 5th grade were put through the fire prevention program. And just a reminder, Sunday, November 1st, we're setting the clocks back. It's also a good time to place your batteries in your smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. That's all I have to report.
Thank you.
On to our village engineer, Paul Fraioli.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. A couple of interactions that we've had with the planning board over the last few months have led to some of the work you see going on in the field. It's going to be commencing soon, or it has been going on now. We've been coordinating with our Corporation Council and the planning board with regard to the Hudson Step permit application, and we have some nice public works improvements that are going to be part and parcel with their project for some of their density bonus work. Some of the more tangible things that you see coming out of Harbor Square LLC's public works improvements that they undertook as part of their project will be starting soon. We're going to start the first phase of the water main, but I'll leave Andrew Teese to discuss the details of that, but they're going to be undertaking down on Snowden Avenue. And they're also doing some of the streetscape improvements out of the front of their building, which the final streetscape is, I think, is scheduled to come in front of the BOT at a future work session sometime soon, because I know they're digging it up now in preparation of that. And lastly, the additional parking that they were giving us for the tri-party traffic swap with Metro North, Harbor Square LLC, and the Village is being constructed right now at that Metro North power station at the bottom of Central Avenue at Water Street. So we'll have some additional tag parking that the clerk's office will be able to sell, which is always a nice thing. It's nice and close to the train station, so that'd be a nice amenity to enhance the parking that's already offered down there by the Village for commuters. Some of the capital improvements that we're working on now, you see the Kilbrook is, if you look over the edge now, you'll see both access points to the Kilbrook are starting to rise up out of the gorge, and the Central Avenue access point is essentially complete, but we have that gated off right now until we finalize the public access coordination. And the structural component to what will be a concrete switchback walkway is probably about 50% complete at the access point at the Caputo Recreation Center. When that's all done, we're looking forward to getting public access coordinated and having a nice fall opening of that trail. Also, some of the paving work that we did is going to be was completed, and I think we're pretty much finished up for the year. With regard to paving, we're going to put off the remainder of our annual bid contractors PO work till next year, because the main road we wanted to complete was Pine Avenue, and Con Ed is still out there, and they still have some subsurface work and then the restoration work that would have to precede our paving anyway. So we're not going to try to rush anything at the end of the year. And if you remember, there are 2-year annual bids that we started last year, so that works well, because now we'll just use the same unit pricing next year with the same PO, and we'll look to commence with Pine Avenue in the spring, assuming that Con Ed is done with their work at that point. But we did do a lot of other right-of-way work for on Iroquois, and a lot of concrete and curb work, which is all applicable to do CHIPS drawdown. So we were able to meet the CHIPS threshold, and we'll be getting a lot of reimbursement there. And if you remember, last time I was here, I mentioned that CHIPS gave us a storm increase grant to our CHIPS funding of approximately $35,000. So in order to get that money, you have to draw down on it in that same calendar year. So we did enough right-of-way work to draw it down. So we'll be getting that additional grant money on top of the 200 plus or minus thousand that we receive every year as a rolling number. The storm grant is not a rolling number, so you have to use it this year. So we did enough work to get that back. So we'll be applying for that now. In-house, the guys are finishing up some projects that we're undertaking with village staff. The most noticeable, I think, to residents is going to be on Lower Linden. We had a culvert issue there. It was like a pseudo failure of the subsurface at the culvert, but we're trying to fix that in-house. It may become the topic of a larger capital project down the road, but we think we can handle it in-house for now, and we'll revisit it if and when. And once they finish that, they're going to start buttoning things up and getting ready for leaf collection season, which is a perfect time for me to do my PSA here now. A few years back, the village had started a policy where if residents bagged their organic waste and left it on curb, we would pick it up every week. and we have done that very successfully. Again, it's intrinsic, but I think what started out at less than 5% of residents taking advantage of the bagged organics policy is probably up around 25 to 30% of the residents utilize that at some point in the year, and you could see the intrinsic scale is, by looking at the organics pile down on Water Street, is the large component of that pile is bagged organic waste. So that's a good thing, and it gets your organic waste removed from the front of your house every week, versus if you pile your leaves up, which is still allowed to be done because we will come by and vacuum them, it could sit out there for weeks based on the manpower and equipment that we have to do our leaf operation presently. So I urge residents to bag their organic waste. It's a cleaner, more efficient protocol to follow, but if you want to rake your leaves or have them blown out to the curb, we will eventually be by there with a vacuum as well. However you get them out there, it's always better to get them out there and recycle them, because that's where they do go. A lot of people do ask that question, because it's better to keep them out of your commercial kitchen waste garbage stream, because then they just get burnt up at Charles Point, and we pay a much more significant tipping fee up there for the organic waste than we do with the county subsidized recycling rate that removes our leaves presently. And lastly, with regard to capital, the reason I'm sitting in the audience tonight is I'm expecting our traffic consultant from Mazer Engineering, Peter Rosillo, to join us at the work session, which is going to follow this legislative session, to discuss the conceptual plans for a rotary overlay at the Main and Spring Street intersection, which was very timely in that there was not that much detailed design work done on the signalization contract that Mazer was awarded a few months back. So we kind of stopped that where it stood, and we started exploring the rotary concept, our roundabout concept, and we're going to present that tonight in the work session, and I think at that point we'll decide how we want to proceed. Thank you.
I just have one question, Paul, about the Pine Avenue activity with respect to Con Ed. I mean, they ripped that street up pretty bad. I mean, how long is it going to be like that? Do we have any idea? Or, and I'm just curious, is it gas that they're working on? Is it gas lines, or what the purpose of the?
I'll answer the last question first. Yes, it's gas service, residential gas service, and
Okay.
it's main and service work to the house. It's all getting redone there, and the cul-de-sac. They're going all the way down to just short of Pine, so a good portion of the road, and Ferris, I believe. And the completion date, as originally presented, was October 1st.
Okay, so
But
you're
not
on,
yet.
you're on a need to know with Con Ed then, right? Is that
Unfortunately, yeah.
okay?
But
All right. I
it's-
mean, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm just curious because
we've already decided to put it off to next year. And
I think that's
based
the
on-
best thing to do. You can't wait for
Yeah.
them at this point. No,
And
I
at
have
this
no
point
problem.
now, it's a financial requirement because we pulled some of those CHIPS monies and put them towards other right-of-way work, particularly for concrete and curb work. So now we'd have to wait till next year anyway to have the funds available when we get CHIPS next year, which they have indicated that they're going to fund next year. I haven't heard anything to tell me otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent of Water and Sewers, Andrew Teese.
Good evening, Mayor and Board.
Good evening.
Need a little bit lower. That's good. The Indian Brook Reservoir is currently at 91%. Last month it was at 90%, 92%. Currently we're purchasing a lot of 90s here. Currently we're purchasing 90% of our water from New York City, 10% from our own source. Last month it was the same percentage. Our reservoir is about a foot below the overflow, so it's in a good place. I wish it was flooding over right now because that helps with skimming off the leaves and the organics, but it's where it's at. Cement water relining project, the contractor has completed all the cement water relining for the first phase. So we're doing this project over a 2-year period. Once we have the health department approval within the next few days, the contractor will remove all the bypass piping that you see, all the plastic piping, and we'll energize the newly cleaned mains. The new 12-inch water main, so the actual brand-new main that we took out, the old one was 1889. We have a piece of that, which you could see it's closed down to like only 2 inches in diameter. That'll be completed within the next 2 weeks, and then we'll disinfect, we'll pressure test it, and we'll put that online. So that's in the right direction. Hazen and Soar environmental engineers will be meeting with the mayor and the board of trustees at the work session of November 10th. We'll discuss their proposal for engineering services for the expansion at the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant. So I'll get you their proposal before this weekend. It's pretty detailed, it's long, and you'll have a couple of weeks to look at it. A new generator at Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant was started today for the first time. Everything went smoothly. We'll have all the operators at the treatment plant trained within the next week. The generator was designed to operate the entire facility, along with taking into account any needs of any additional facility expansions. So if we were to expand onto the plant or build a plant next door and disable that plant, this generator will work in both situations. So it was like a change order that we did 6 months into the design, but it was well worth it because now we know we need to increase capacity. It will also operate steady state for 14 days before it needs to be refueled. So it's a 5,000 gallon tank. This was an issue back in Superstorm Sandy where we couldn't get diesel that easily. So we had to call over the county to get diesel because the depots were closed down. So that'll avoid that issue. Paul had mentioned about the Snowden water main job. Just spoke to the county today. County's going to give approval for the contractor for that project to install the first 600 out of the 1,200 feet of water main before this winter starts. So probably like they could work through a 2-month period. There's only 3 houses on that first phase of the line, so we'll figure out how we're going to get water to them. But the key is they really want to get half the project completed before the spring so that they're ready for next summer. And they'll be able to, sell the units and have clean water to that facility. So the timeline would be an issue if we waited till the spring, and also if we allowed bypass piping, into December, there would be freezing issues. So I think logistically it's going to work out fine. Water main and service repair since the last report: 9 Yerkes Lane, 6-inch water break; 10 Sabrina Lane, renewed water service; 42 North Malcolm, renewed water service; 118 Croton Avenue, replaced curb valve; 47 Dale Avenue, service repair; 13 Nelson Avenue, service repair. And our management in the water side of DPW below me have been spending most of their time out there on both projects, along with the consulting engineers. So it's like a belt and suspenders approach, so that when issues arise, they can handle it fast and they make sure everything that's going in the ground is correct. So, thanks.
You.
Move on to Treasurer Thomas Warren.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Board of Trustees. We've been very busy the past month or so, assisting the village manager and working with department heads on the preparation of the tentative budget due in 2 weeks. Also been busy with our annual bond and note sale. During September, we prepared the official statement for investors in order to sell serial bonds of $740,000 and a 1-year bond anticipation note for about $4.3 million for capital improvements and to finance tax surcharge claims. The ban also included construction of the water main replacement project that is ongoing, and the anticipated construction of the Indian Brook Reservoir and Dam that will start next spring, and also the fire apparatus rehabilitation and a large DPW dump truck, as well as other various vehicles in the village. This year we advanced the annual bond and band sale by about 6 weeks in order to try to get the process removed from the budget process so that we could spend more time working with the board on the budget during November. And Another change this year, unlike in prior years where we always sold our debt with a Moody's bond rating, this year we opted to go to the bond market without a Moody's bond rating, mostly because the serial bond itself was less than $1 million, so a bond rating isn't required. Plus, it just wasn't cost beneficial to spend the money on a Moody's bond rating in anticipation of lower interest on such a small amount of serial bond. And for a one-year BAN, oftentimes you don't get a bond rating or a rating on the note if you don't also get a bond rating on the bond itself. So our strategy actually did pay off. We opened the bids for the bond and the ban on September 23rd, and the closing was October 2nd. There were 3 bids on the 11-year serial bond with true interest rates ranging between 2.71 and 2.08%, which was a very tight grouping of bids. And the low bid of 2.08 was awarded to Greene County Commercial Bank, which was a surprise to us that a regional small bank from the Catskills would actually bid on our debt, and they were actually the low bid. Usually, you know, we deal with larger banks and investment consortiums, so it was a pleasant surprise. Although we did find out that they don't have FedEx delivery service up to the Catskills, so we have to find another source to get the documents to them. And this was also a rate that was lower than last year's by about 50 basis points. Last year the rate was 5.575. And then also for the 1-year BAN, we had 4 competitive bids with rates that range from 0.94 to 0.636%, you know, all well below 1%. We did accept the low bid. It was a little bit higher than last year's bid, but that's just a reflection of the interest rates in the market. But still, the overall low rates for the bond and the ban translates to lower interest expense in the budget, which benefits the taxpayers in the village. On another subject, as had been reported at last week's board work session, the village's government efficiency plan, which was jointly filed with the town, was approved by the New York State Division of the Budget. Earlier this year, when we filed the plan, we summarized how the government efficiency plan had actual documented savings of $3.95 million, and we are only required to document $938,000 in savings. And this is the next step that would allow the state to send out the tax-free credits or refund checks to the homeowners. So that's always good news. Also, in September, the New York State Comptroller's Office released their annual report for the statewide monitoring system for local governments, for those governments mostly that have calendar year fiscal units. And so for the 3rd year in a row, since they started this plan, the village received a no designation fiscal stress score, which is as positive as it gets. It's kind of like negative reinsurance that from what they could determine from reviewing our finances, there was just no indication of fiscal stress whatsoever. However, I was a little bit disappointed because they look at things like you know, fund balance. They look at cash ratios, short-term debt issuance, short-term debt trends, personal service and employee benefits as a percentage of revenue, debt service as a percentage of revenues. All these things we got zeros in, which is great. The only thing that we actually got a 3.3% added to the fiscal stress score, which is actually translated to 1 point, was what they deem operating deficit, where they compared total revenues to total expenditures. And unfortunately, for 2014, out of the $43.6 million in revenues and expenditures, expenditures exceeded revenues by $1,360. So that was worthy of 1 point to give us a bit of a negative rating in that regard. But
That's all they
still,
could find, right, Tom? That's all there is?
you know, we had to buy like maybe one less computer or something, and that would have done it. You know, it's really good news from the State Controller's Office that there's no indication of any fiscal stress. And finally, I think the last thing to report on is that today I had the pleasure to represent the village at a training session sponsored by the New York State Municipal Administrators and Managers Association. I am a member of the Downstate Municipal Administrators Association this year. And it was actually a cruise on the river. We departed from the West Haverstraw Marina, and we were escorted through the construction site down at the Tappan Zee Bridge. And Brian Conybeare, the governor's special liaison to the Tappan Zee Bridge, actually boarded our boat and guided us through with a talking, description of what's going on. And we looked at some of the construction that was going on. We also talked about state and private partnership, as well as state and local government partnership, and some of the involvements that local governments, especially in the Tappan Zee Bridge area, are doing to help the state with the construction of the bridge. And then also, as we passed Ossining twice, we also talked about the proposed Sing Sing prison, and pointed out different museum. Did talk about the prison and pointed out the old cell block and different parts, but it was mostly to talk about the proposed museum. And it was also the first time I actually got a view of Harbor Square development, which was also talked about from the river. So it was a nice view and a nice day for a cruise today. But we were training.
Wow, thank you.
Hey, Tom, I have one question. You mentioned the Upstate Bank that did bond anticipation note,
Greene
right?
County Commercial Bank.
Right, but then who did the other loan? Did you mention the name of the institution?
No, I didn't, but I do have them here. I mentioned that they were usually larger investment consortiums, and on the bond, the other bidders were Sage, Ruddy and Company, and Roosevelt and Cross. Roosevelt and Cross is a consortium of local banks, and they often win the bids. On the bond anticipation note, the bidders were TD Securities, Jeffries, Chase Bank, and Oppenheimer, and the low bid of 0.86%, I believe, was, I'm sorry, the low bid was 0.636%, and that was TD Securities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent of Parks and Recreations, Christopher Soy.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees.
Good evening.
Recreation report. The majority of our fall programs began the week of September 24th, and just here are some program highlights. We offered a number of new youth and adult programs this fall, including programs that are currently running, such as an Art Explorers program for children ages grades 1st through 5th, and a creative writing program for children ages 8 through 14. Our USTA Quick Start Tennis program for children ages 6 to 10, which is held in our community center gym, had a very strong registration with 22 participants, which is just a couple shy of our program capacity. Our Learn to Swim program with 34 separate lesson sections offered this fall had a very good registration numbers, with most classes at or close to capacity. We have a total of 185 registered participants in our Learn to Swim program this fall. And our after school program for the 2015-2016 school year, which is serving just over 100 children in grades 1st through 6th, which is right at our program capacity for that program. A special events update. We ran a successful Fall Family Fun Day on Saturday, October 3rd at the Community Center Gym. The event included pumpkin painting, face painting, beading, live music, pie eating. Just want to thank our recreation staff and our park staff for coming together and putting on a great event, and it was really enjoyed by all those that attended. I also assisted in the Chalk It Up Festival at Market Square on Sunday, October 4th. This event was put together by the Downtown Events Committee with artists of various ages coming out and creating their works of art along the sidewalk. Live music and vendors were also part of the event. Prizes were awarded for the top 3 artists, and again, a good time and good weather good weather helped in the good time that was had by all that attended. Upcoming programs and events are, as mentioned by Trustee Quezada, Forest of Fears Haunted Hayride this Saturday, October 24th at Cedar Lane Park from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. This event is put together by the Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy in collaboration with the Recreation and Parks Department. As mentioned, tickets are $5, and just an FYI, the hayride will include frightening images, so it may not be suitable for the youngest of children, but it should be a great event. Our Dare Halloween at the Community Center on Saturday, October 31st from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We invite everyone to come down in their costumes for games, music, food, and of course candy. Detective Ed Walker and Officer Shelley Farrell will be on hand to give out candy and name the winner of our Best Costume Award. Also, the Elks will again be generously providing hot dogs and apple juice free of charge. Reminder that our youth recreation basketball program registration is currently open and will remain open through Friday, November 20th. Once registration is closed, we will not be able to accept late registration, so don't wait. Sign up soon. And anyone interested in finding out more about our programs offerings, I strongly encourage everyone to visit the Recreation Parks Department page of the Village website, villageofossining.org. Once you're there, you can see program updates, event information, our seasonal program brochure, our pool schedule, etc. You can also access our Facebook page, and you can like us there as well. On the parks and facilities sides, we continue to coordinate and manage along with the park foreman, our park and athletic field usage by the youth sports groups at various community organizations for special events. We continue our seasonal maintenance of the parks, facilities, and grounds. We have moved forward with the planting of trees in Nelson Sitting Park to replace trees that need to be brought down earlier this year. And I just want to recognize our parks crew as they recently assisted the Girl Scouts by digging approximately 25 holes around the village and town for their second annual Scarecrow Palooza event, which is running now through the first week in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Director of Personnel, Linda McMahon.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. Our annual medical prescription notices have been distributed this year with a new addition, and that is an introduction to our online wellness programs. And we've tried to encourage employees to get more involved right on their own individual website, and that was distributed explaining how you can sign up and achieve all the benefits at no cost, and it's just a lot of information that's, I think, underutilized. During last month, many mandated training sessions were held. There were 2 full days of confined space and excavation and trenching for the DPW staff and parks. And I'd just like to touch a little bit on what's involved, since this actually is our most extensive training, and it's certainly very important. 2 full days, and each of them are 8-hour days. The employees are required to go to 1 full day. And during that time, the employees are in the classroom. They're learning more about the OSHA regulations. Then there's a competency test. There's a written exam, followed by hands-on exercises, and that's for both standards. Then for confined space, they're assigned roles as though they were performing the task in the field. They are completing the required permits. They conduct all the air monitoring, and that's certainly a very critical portion of the confined space entry. Then they actually do entry into confined spaces, and they also perform good air rescues. Our employees are permitted to enter a confined space or retrieve only if the air quality is good. Otherwise, we have the emergency response for poor air quality. Under the excavation and trenching, they also had the classroom, of course, and then they completed they review a competent person checklist, which is a safeguard when they go to the site. They check all of the equipment, they check the surrounding areas, any kind of spoil piles, anything that could affect the dig. Then they're required to review the tabulated data, which assists them in how to assemble the shoring based on the depth, width, and type of soil. Then they actually assemble the shoring and just kind of practice and ask questions. So there were many good questions that are asked, and safer work practices always result from each session. Next, all departments participated in the required workplace violence program, and I wish to thank the chief for providing us with Lieutenant Slater as an instructor in this important training. And the employees were very engaged in all the material that he presented. We also completed our annual sexual harassment and anti-harassment training. Just yesterday, the DPW employees who operate bucket trucks must do so only if they are certified. And yesterday, this recertification occurred, and it lasts for 3 years. So it's always a pleasure to work with our employees because they are truly committed to doing things safely, and it's actually very rewarding to see them do it very well. Thank you.
Director of Code Enforcement, Al Sirocco.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I have the Building Department Activity Report for the month of September. We had a total of 47 new complaints this month. Total complaints to date, 553. New and old complaints closed this month were 32. To date, we have 358 that have been closed. Notice of violations that were issued were 6 with 11 counts. To date, we have 230 violations with 737 counts. Notice of violations closed this month, we had 15 with 19 counts. To date, we have 143 violations closed with 277 counts. Court appearance tickets issued this month, we had 1 with 1 count. Total count court appearance tickets year to date have been 89 with 365 counts. Court appearance tickets closed this month, we had a total of 7. To date, we've had 17. Court fines assessed this month was $2,025. Year to date, we've had a total of $19,025. We've had 42 new building permits, fee totaling $9,177. Year to date permits, we have 273, fee totaling $99,841.50. We've issued 30 certificates of occupancy, year to date 225. Final cost affidavits fee this month was $196. To date, it's $5,267. We've had 25 new plumbing permits, fee totaling $1,628. Year to date permits, we've had 166 with a fee total of $12,323. Electrical permits, we had 23. Fee totaling $1,656, 209 to date, fee totaling $23,319. Tree permits, we had 6 new tree permits, fee totaling $380. Year to date, we've had 40 permits, a fee totaling $2,640. We've had 2 new sign permits, fee totaling $120 this month. Year to date, 11 permits have been issued, fee totaling $660. We've done 2 pre-date inspections this month, fee totaling $200. Pre-dates to date are 13, fee totaling $2,430. We've done 26 searches, fee totaling $2,675 this month. Year-to-date total 246, fee totaling $21,535. We've completed 20 foils this month, year-to-date 224. Overnight parking inspections 12, year-to-date 710. We've had 11 Section 8 inspections, year-to-date 145. We've had 9 fire assembly inspections, year-to-date 181. And building and plumbing permits, we've done 238 this month, and to date we've done 1,902 inspections. Plan reviews to be completed for building, plumbing, electrical, pre-date backflow, tree and sign permits. We did 100 reviews, and plan reviews completed year-to-date 764. Just a couple quick announcements. All property owners are required by New York State Code to supply all their tenants with a minimum temperature of 68 degrees at all times from September 15th through May 31st. If anyone does have a heat complaint, please feel free to call the building department at 941-3199 during business hours, which are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And if after hours, please call the police department at 941-4099. And also, quick reminder, the New York State Property Maintenance Code, which is retroactive, requires that all property owners install smoke and carbon alarms throughout their buildings per code. If anyone does have any questions on where the alarm should be installed by code, please feel free to call the building department at 941-3199, and we'd be more than happy to assist you. And that's it. Thank you.
That completes our administrative reports for this evening. Do we have any organizational announcements?
I do. Well, the chief's not here. I don't know if there's any tickets left for the Ossining Historical Society dinner on Friday. I know sometimes that sells out. And that is happening at the Sleepy Hollow Country Club. I'm sure the Historical Society would be happy to take donations if you, even if you're not able to attend. It's a wonderful event, and this year is particularly special because it's we're going to be welcoming a new president to the Ossining Historical Society next year, which will be Chief Burton, is president of the Historical Society, Burton. And I also want to thank the Historical Society for being very helpful to the village historian in her gathering of information for the film that that she's put together on the history of downtown Ossining. And also, a few of us in this room are going to be participating this weekend. Apparently, the farmers market is the place to be for the next couple of Saturdays. This Saturday is a fashion show. The Down to Earth Markets is coordinating with local clothing stores, and a few of us have gotten fitted for our runway event. Right? Lori Lee, Abe, Trustee Codman, Trustee Quesada. Rika, you didn't get on this action, did you?
I'm on a high school reunion gig this weekend.
Okay.
Not mine.
So we're really looking forward to that, and then obviously next Saturday we'll be back there for the Coffee with the Cops. So please join us at all the fun events happening in the village.
Moving on, are there any comments on any of the village board resolutions? Not seeing anyone. Move into the adoption. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the October 7th, 2015 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board, Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated October 21st, 2015, the amount of $713,411.17. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
On the board.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the about 400,000 of this dollar amount is capital projects, and just want everybody to understand the meaning of those numbers. A large portion of that is, I believe, being spent on the sewer line project. So that's moving along, and obviously, as Paul Fraioli mentioned, we're coming to the completion of that project and looking forward to that pathway. Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adoption of introductory local law number 7 is local law 7, 2015, titled Vehicle and Traffic Law Revisions. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of a proposed local law entitled Vehicle and Traffic Law Revision, which law would clarify certain on-street parking regulations related to Walden Road and Van Cortlandt, Linden, and Croton Avenues, and whereas in accordance with the New York State law and after having provided all requisite notice, the Board of Trustees convened a public hearing on introductory local law number 7, 2015, on September 16, 2015, at 7:30 p.m. at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, during which hearing the public had an opportunity to be heard on such proposed local law with an adjourned hearing also duly conducted on October 7th. And whereas the matter was the topic of further discussion and deliberations at a public work session on October 14, 2015, following which the board determined there was no impediment to proceeding with adoption of the local law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts introductory local law number 7 as local law number 7, 2015, entitled Vehicles and Traffic Law Revisions, and directs that said local law be filed and or distributed in accordance with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify that this particular local law that we're passing is clarification of what we found to be some errors in in the law itself. I believe there's other things that need to be done specific to Van Cortlandt, and I think that that's something that we need to take up. That is not only the parking issues there, but parking issues kind of globally. And I know that Trustee Casada has been passionate about this, and we're going to hear a lot more about this. Maybe not so much between now and the end of the year, but certainly into next year. The situation of parking in the village is something we're going to be addressing going forward.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote. Trustee Levin,
Yay.
Trustee Cruzado,
Aye.
Trustee Codman,
Aye.
and Mayor Garrity.
Aye.
Thank you. Whereas on February 15th, 2005, the Village Board of the Village of Ossining approved the application of T-Mobile Northeast LLC for the issuance of a special use permit for the installation of a wireless telecommunications facility at 117 South Highland Avenue, and October 6, 2010, the Village Board approved a recertification of such special use permits, all in accordance with Chapter 246 Telecommunications Facilities of the Village Code of the Village of Ossining. And whereas in accordance with Section 246-21 of the Village Code, application for recertification of such permit is required between 12 and 6 months prior to each 5-year anniversary of the issuance of same, and whereas on August 13, 2014, T-Mobile Northeast LLC submitted an application for recertification for the special use permit in accordance with Chapter 246 with reports on Pioneer Engineering LLC dated August 12, 2014 as to equipment inventory and structural integrity, and Pinnacle Telecom Group dated January 7, 2014 as to FCC RF compliance, and such application and said reports have now been reviewed and discussed by the Board at public meeting dated October 14, 2015, with no objection to proceeding with the recertification having been determined at this time. Now therefore be resolved that the special use permit previously issued to T-Mobile Northeast LLC in connection with wireless telecommunications facility located at 117 South Highland Avenue is hereby recertified subject to the following conditions. 1. That the required performance security bond in the amount of $25,000 be maintained in full force and effect until the eventual removal of the facility. 2. That the required liability insurance naming the village and its officers, boards, employees, committee members, attorneys, agents and consultants additional assured be maintained in full force and effect until the eventual removal of the facility. Proof of said insurance should include the annual provision of the actual endorsement from the policy that contains the above language regarding the additional named insured. 3. This recertification is in effect for a 5 years period commencing February 16th, 2015. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas on February 21st, 2006, the Village Board of the Village of Ossining approved the application of T-Mobile Northeast LLC for the issuance of a special use permit for the installation of a wireless telecommunications facility at 56 Browning Drive. And on February 2nd, 2011, the Village Board approved a recertification of such special use permit, all in accordance with Chapter 246, Telecommunications Facilities of the Village Code of the Village of Ossining. And whereas in accordance with Section 246-21 of the Village Code, application for recertification of such permit is required between 12 and 6 months prior to each 5-year anniversary of the issuance of same. And whereas on August 13th, 2015, T-Mobile Northeast LLC submitted an application for recertification for the special use permit in accordance with Chapter 246 with reports by Tectonic Engineering and Surveying Consultants dated August the 7th, 2015 as to equipment inventory and structural integrity, and Pinnacle Telecom Group dated January 28th, 2015 as to FCC RF compliance. Such application and said reports have now been reviewed and discussed by the Board at a public meeting dated October 14th, 2015 with no objection to proceeding with the recertification having been determined at that time. Now therefore be it resolved that the special use permit previously issued to T-Mobile Northeast LLC in connection with wireless telecommunications facility located at 56 Browning Drive is hereby recertified subject to the following conditions. 1, that the required performance security bond in the amount of $25,000 be maintained in full force and effect until the eventual removal of the facility. 2, that the required liability insurance naming the village and its officers, boards, employees, committee members, attorneys, agents, and consultants, additional insured, be maintained in full force and effect until the eventual removal of the facility. Proof of said insurance should include the annual provision of the actual endorsement from the policy that contains the above language regarding to the additional named insured. And 3, this recertification is in effect for the 5-year period commencing February 22nd, 2016. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees hereby accepts the terms and conditions of a certain settlement agreement in connection with employee 001103 and authorizes and directs the village manager to execute and submit any and all forms and documents in connection therewith. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That completes your resolutions for this evening. Do we have any continuing business of the board?
We do not.
Do we have any new business of the board?
We do not.
That takes us to visitor recognition, and not seeing any. May I have an adjournment to the work session?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Mayor, actually, this is, again, we just wanted to bring these two items to a special work session tonight because the next work session is not going to be until November 10th. So we wanted the two items are kind of sensitive. So Corporation Council will address the first one.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate this. In September 29th of 2014, you passed a resolution authorizing the treasurer to accept a portion payment as a result of the auction conducted by the town for properties in a tax lien sale. You also authorized that a portion payment to be applied in accordance with course of dealing and an IMA that has been in place with the town. And so the proceeds now have been received. That auction was held and the closing date was the middle of August. So the apportionment has been done and the calculations have been provided by the Treasurer's Office. Unfortunately, the sale proceeds do not rise to the level where they're going to cover the cost of every dollar of the principal and outstanding taxes. So we have to revisit that resolution. We thought perhaps that the base amount of the taxes would be covered, but there still is some missing funds. So much like the town did in a recent resolution, we're going to have to take up that resolution in order to waive the difference in base taxes and declare that small portion as uncollectible. I can give you the figures. The write-off, a total write-off is $6,124.23. Of that write-off, a portion of that is penalties and statutory fees. So the principal amount is less than $6,000, but still there's a portion of the base taxes that aren't covered. So I have drafted a proposed resolution for you to take up. You can take it up at a later time, or I have it prepared should you at the end of the work session want to return to a regular session and vote on that. It just is in recognition of that September 29th resolution and that this need to revise it based upon the need to actually waive a portion of the base taxes at this point. You have to be able to write them off.
Please, go ahead, Trustee Gagnon.
Couple questions. So, just to clarify, so this was a property that was obviously had past taxes owed, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There were liens foreclosed, plus there were outstanding liens, plus the current taxes were still due as of the time of closing. So they've done the apportionment on the sales proceeds at this point.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the proceeds of the sale aren't enough to cover back taxes, penalties, and other costs associated with the sale itself.
Yes, we actually knew that in September, but we thought
Right.
that there would be enough to cover the base taxes, the principal amount. You wouldn't need to provide a waiver and write those off as uncollectible if we'd been able to cover the base taxes, but the proceeds didn't rise to
Didn't
that
even
level.
cover that.
No. If you recall, this was a problematic property and actually had a fire, and we actually had to go in and secure the property against vandalism and for security purposes. We had
Is that
the
so? What you're
building
saying is the
department
cost of that is all included in this entire thing. The cost for us to keep it
Yes,
safe
to
and
keep it
all
safe
those
and
other things.
secure as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And-
But since a small portion of the actual base principal taxes will not be covered, and they're accrued, it's the accrued amount up to the date of closing, so that would be up until August.
Is there? I guess okay, that's fine. Thanks for clarifying that. The other question I have is this sounds like an accounting entry, right? I mean, we're writing this off,
Yes.
correct? So, from a time frame urgency perspective, we wouldn't have to act on this today, right?
No.
We could wait until our legislative session next.
You could wait until the 4th of November, no problem. I have forwarded that resolution, and the clerk's office has it, so she can easily add it to that agenda.
Yeah, we don't have to go
We
back
just have
into
to
legislative
declare
session
them.
today. I see no reason to do that.
No,
since,
we have to declare them uncollectible and waive them prior to the end of the year.
Okay.
Essentially.
So that would be my suggestion. I don't know if anybody has other
You got it.
questions.
John's sentiment shared by the rest of
Yes,
the
it
board.
is.
All right.
Yeah, I do have a quick question in regards to that property. I know it's a little bit more complicated than it sounds. So that property was sold. Someone owns that property right now?
Yes, it's back on the
Okay.
tax
So it's
rolls
back in
as
the
of
tax rolls.
August,
Okay.
mid-August.
All right. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the taxes from there forward are, they'll be taxed at 100% of the assessed value, and the new property owner will, going forward, pay those taxes as they accrue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll bring that to the board at the November, I think it was, 4th meeting, correct, yeah. So the next item that we wanted to discuss with you is at the last work session, we ended up tabling the presentation we had for you for the Spring and Main Street intersection project. So we have Paul Faioli, village engineer, and Peter Rosella from Mazer Engineering also that are going to provide to you an update.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Not being in the usual work session environment, we're going to try to put something together that is a decent presentation. So I'm going to act as sort of like a boy Friday and an easel as we go through this. But if you remember what I mentioned in my
I can't remember anybody ever using that term
yeah.
at a meeting, but good for you.
Where's it from?
42nd
That'll be your
Street,
quiz
right?
for next week.
42nd Street,
quiz,
no?
right?
Pop culture quiz.
So we have Peter Vasillo from Mazer Engineering back with us this evening, and what we did was follow the board's lead in investigating some of the conceptual ideas of a roundabout in lieu of the originally proposed intersection rehabilitation that essentially was going to rehabilitate to today's technology Main Spring Street intersection in our downtown. So we wanted to do a concept study that answered some generic questions first. For example, how much parking will you potentially lose? How much encroachment on the village parcel where the Christmas tree or Market Square is? And would there be any vehicle restrictions if we put a rotary there versus the type of vehicles that can go through that area now? No, a very generic pro and con analysis with an overlay. And Peter's done all that, and we had some time to review it. But he's going to present that in a little more detail tonight, and so the public can also be included in this discussion. I'd like to also maybe zoom in on some of the overlays with Tom, so I'll work with him to do that as we allow you to look at handouts, which Peter also brought with him tonight. So I'll give those to you, and then I'll show the camera and turn it over to Peter. Thank you.
You.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to apologize for missing the last session. It's a calendar mix-up.
We are happy to see you tonight.
But I'm happy to be here. The first image that Paul has given you is just a basic layout of a roundabout. And again, it's conceptual. This size is about the minimum that we could put to support the traffic that would normally want to go through this intersection, or what you currently have going through it. There'll be an additional handout that will show you the steps between a fire truck, a WB 62 vehicle, and a bus to go around the roundabout. And again, it could be a little larger, and I'll get into that a little bit later, why you may want to consider either increasing the diameter a little bit or shrinking the center island a little bit. What I'd like to do is very quickly go through some key features of a roundabout.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
As you're looking at the image, the key islands are the central island, of course. Now, the central island, it's important in this type of roundabout. There are mini roundabouts that are actually traversable, where you actually allow trucks or cars to actually drive right across them. They'll be color contrasted. They'll have a little raised area that is identifiable from a distance. This roundabout intends the center island to actually be a raised island with barrier curb and landscaped. And it's supposedly landscaped in a way that as you approach it, you can see that there is an obstruction in front of you, and it sort of forces you to slow down. So it's a traffic calming measure. Another element are the splitter islands. Those are the islands that are on the outside on each of the approaches. Those islands are used to sort of direct traffic to in the right direction. That is, to the right as you approach the roundabout. And those are normally mountable. They're also color contrast. Some people use Belgian block. Others will use stamped concrete. The state uses stamped concrete today, as they do for the apron that goes around the outside of the center island. That apron is normally 2 to 3 inches above the circulating roadway. So you have almost like a tiered, a wedding cake kind of effect. That also is done with stamped concrete color contrast usually, and that is really intended to direct people to use the circulating road, not the apron. The apron is there for trucks or vehicles that can't negotiate just within the circulating road. The entrance lanes on all entrance and exit lanes essentially are all no narrower than 15 feet. Preferably, you'd like to get them to be 18 feet. You can see on the easterly side of this roundabout, we have little pavers that are required for vehicles to negotiate those particular turns. But the intent is to have the normal everyday passenger car not ride up on those. So those will also be raised slightly. And finally, we don't show on this drawing, but what you have to consider pedestrians, obviously in the downtown area, what the pedestrians would normally cross through the splitter islands, or just at the back of the splitter islands, on all of the approaches, so that and they're identified through signing, and there's a drawing I'll show you, that a typical drawing, how the signing goes. But that's where normally the pedestrians would be. And finally, you'd have landscape strips obviously in the center as well as in areas on the approaches to this area. The idea is to meter the traffic, to calm it down. Normally, traffic will not go through this more than 15 miles per hour. That's about the fastest that a vehicle would go through this, would be 15 miles an hour. On the second sheet, I've listed in order of operation, safety, traffic calming, space, environmental factors, and non-motorized users, operations, and access management, the advantages and disadvantages of using roundabouts. And I can just run quickly down the advantages, which would be lower delay. Well, you don't have a signal anymore. People queue up and they get metered through the intersection as gaps appear. We've performed an intersection capacity analysis on this using a roundabout, and with the design we have and with the volumes that were recorded, I think in 2013 by NYGARD, this intersection would operate level service A and B in the AM PM peak hour, which is really quite efficient. So in that respect, you're really reducing delay. And it sounds counterintuitive because you would think I say traffic calming is going to slow you down, but in effect, you're not stopping anyone. People are yielding. Everything is a yield, and it works quite effectively. It reduces the lane requirements. Right now on Spring, you have a left turn lane. You don't need a left turn lane now because the one lane acts as the left turn lane. So your lane assignments are reduced. Crash severity, I'm not so sure that you have a major condition here in downtown, but in more rural areas, right angle accidents tend to be the most severe type. This eliminates right angle accidents. It will, if you look at the negative side of it, it can affect some side swipes, and single vehicle accidents tend to go up because mostly with people that are unfamiliar with how to negotiate this. Once they do it once, they pretty much have it down. And again, speeds are slowed down. It's a major traffic calming measure. It requires less queue storage space because traffic is constantly moving. But it does require a little bit more right away, as the image shows you. It does bleed out into adjacent areas. Noise is reduced. Air quality is improved because, again, you're not stopping. So there are advantages there. Pedestrians only have to look in one direction. They only have to look to the left. You don't have to worry about anybody coming from the right. No one's coming from the right at a roundabout. So there's a benefit there also. That is before they get to the splitter island. Once they're at the splitter island, they have to look right. But the idea is once they walk in, they're only really looking in one major direction. And that is the reason for the splitter island. It tends to give you a refuge area for pedestrians. So on wider streets, you like to have larger splitter islands. On narrow streets, they're not quite as necessary. Bicyclists also have options for negotiating. It isn't as clear from a bicyclist perspective because bicyclists really are supposed to follow the same path as vehicles. They ride in the road. They're not supposed to be riding on the sidewalk. There can be confusion if you have a separate bike lane where pedestrians could think that they're supposed to use that lane as well. But there's very few roundabouts that I've seen that actually have bike lanes built into them. And a very simple, two simple ideas here is that there's no more signal maintenance. There's no signal at all. And finally, it facilitates U-turns. If you went the wrong way, just go around the roundabout and head back to where you came from.
And around.
The disadvantages are, they suggest one of them is that there's an equal priority for each approach. That's really not necessarily the case because the approaches that have the heaviest traffic are the ones that are going to move more frequently. For example, the Central Avenue volumes are quite low that come out of Central Avenue compared to what's coming down Main Street. So Main Street is really going to wind up being, in Spring, the right turn, particularly off of Spring, will be the major movements at this intersection. And the others will, they'll have to wait for gaps, which is what they will do. I mentioned about the single vehicle fixed object crashes, and that's really more of a person not knowing how to negotiate a roundabout. and this is a single lane roundabout, not a multi-lane roundabout, where you have weaving within the roundabout, which can be, some people, very, very difficult to negotiate. This can be more expensive than other traffic calming measures. Now, if we're only talking about calming, that would be like a speed hump. This is more expensive than a speed hump, clearly. Again, I mentioned it takes up more room. It may have impacts to natural or cultural resources because of the spatial requirements. In this case, it does. We're into a park over here. That's obvious. And that's a decision that has to be made. Is it worth it? Pedestrians with vision impairments, it's not quite as easy to negotiate walking around a roundabout as it is at an intersection with a detectable field pointing directly in the direction of the crosswalk. For sight impaired people, this is a little bit more difficult. Requires landscape maintenance. I don't think, to me, that is not that big of an issue. I think that, you know, if you want to have this kind of feature, you're going to make it look good and you're going to maintain it. And it says it may reduce the number of available gaps mid-block. Here you really don't have that, where you have a lot of access driveways coming in that are close to this intersection, but where there's a signal, the signal provides gaps. If there's no signal, traffic keeps moving. So that's what they mean by, you know, there being fewer gaps in the traffic or side street traffic. Now I have also a set of drawings which
Thanks. I have short arms, apparently.
This is a series of drawings, a fire truck, a school bus, and a WB62 tractor trailer. The shaded area represents the tracking of each of these vehicles from each of the approaches. So the first diagram shows coming up Main Street from the west, the right turn onto Spring, negotiating around the circle, going onto Main, or going to the Central Avenue area. The second shows you the exact same thing for a school bus, and then for a WB62 truck. Now, again, you'll see in certain instances it will ride on that apron, right adjacent to the center island. That's intended. Or it will track across a portion of the splitter island. I mean, that's intended. We'd prefer it not do it over the splitter islands where possible, but in this case, there's a couple of determinations that have to be made. Is there going to be any restriction to certain kind of vehicles going down any particular street that I'm currently not aware of? In other words, we have a bus route, I guess the Beeline bus route, that will be able to be negotiated today. But I don't know if you're taking WB62 tractor trailers down Central, or if that's something that is restricted currently or may in the future be restricted.
Are we asking questions at the end, or can we ask questions as you go along?
You can ask.
Great. So on the roundabout, now that you're going through the different sizes of emergency vehicles, if I'm at an intersection, I have a flat tire, people go around me. So where is like the emergency lane on here for like at 7:20 when everybody's running to the train and I have a flat tire? What do people do to get around me?
Well, I would recommend you go into the infield, into the apron area, because most vehicles will use the actual travel path and will be able to get around you like that. That apron area is 15 feet wide.
So if it's two cars?
Yeah, you could sit two cars side by side in the apron
Okay.
area.
But I'm sorry, but if we do the landscaping version, you can't go over the middle with the
No, you
landscaping
can't. No, there's a
version.
barrier curb. There's a 6-inch
And there's
curb.
right, and there's no pedestrian crossing
No.
on the landscape model.
None.
Okay.
What we find, we've done a few of these, what a lot of municipalities like to have done is they like to have a conduit run out there in case, you decide to put a flagpole with a light or some kind of monument or sculpture or something, they try to work in, features that maybe it's the entrance to a village or to a downtown area. So you're always trying to think of, if this is this going to be a, one of those an area where a rain garden area may fit in this, or in the adjacent areas next to this. But yes, that is not intended to be traversed by anyone, vehicular or pedestrian.
But all this portion that looks like paving stone around it, that's where the trucks can drive up onto it, or a
Right.
car in distress could pull over
up.
into that space because
That's right.
it's a stamped concrete
Right.
visual
It's
barrier.
visual.
But
It's probably it's going to be different in color. You'll have blacktop, and then that may be like
Right.
a gray stone look. Like
Okay.
a Belgian block look.
and that's what would surround the lovely rain garden
Right.
fountain sculpture area. Thank
Exactly.
you. Okay, water fountain for
No,
drinking?
you don't want
For the
Then
horses?
you'll have people running to it.
Hard to cross.
So I won't go through each of these, but you can look at. But what we've done was on each approach, we've attempted to show that you can negotiate. Now there is one area coming out of Banweath, I guess it is how you pronounce it.
Brandreth?
Brandreth. Yeah, if you come out of that, there's let's see, I don't think it's for the truck. Let me see which one it was for. One that was a tough thing to negotiate. Find it. Yeah, it's let me see if I can. No, I guess that did work. I thought initially it didn't. The WB 62 coming out cannot. It's very difficult for it to make a right turn down Main Street. It sort of cuts that corner, and I don't want to show any more of that sidewalk in front of that corner building there, the Flats LLC building, but. What you can do in a case like that, in almost any of these cases, is that if you can't do that, you just negotiate. You go around the roundabout and go
Right.
down that way. So as long as you can get around the roundabout, you can really get into almost any approach, or leave at any egress. If you get to digest these and you have any questions, please feel free to call me. Last document I have is a sample of a roundabout that we did that is permitted. It's going to be under construction in the spring. This is up in Newburgh. What I'm doing is giving you a sample of what the signing looks like, and then there's along with that there's the maintenance and protection of traffic plan, which is a major portion of constructing these roundabouts, what it takes. And then there's a typical section in the back that gives you sort of a half view of the roundabout material.
Are you going that way?
So as you can see, this is a 5-pointed roundabout. And while the roundabout we have for your area here is about 110 foot in diameter.
Right now?
110 foot in diameter. This roundabout is 120 feet in diameter. So it's not that much bigger. It's a state highway, so you're going to have a lot more signing on this because of the trailblazers for the state highway. But you will have on the roundabout, you will have one way, you will have chevrons, you will have yield signs on each approach, you will have yield ahead signs on each approach. You'll have pedestrian crossing signs at each of the splitter islands. And as you can see here, the sidewalk that's shown here is exactly how the sidewalk would look for your roundabout, where the sidewalks go through the splitter island or are at the back of the splitter islands.
Peter, I need to interrupt you for just one moment because we need to take a hard break on our camera, so we'll get right back to you.
Sure.
Tom, for alerting us.
Okay.
And to go out. Okay, good. If you turn to the second, if you have any questions on the signing and the striping, feel free to ask. It's, again, this looks a lot more cluttered than yours would because it has a lot of trailblazers on each approach to tell you where the state highway is and how to get around to get on 52 east or west.
So the pedestrian part of this, the driver's always looking to the right, is that correct?
In order for them to enter into the
So you
roundabout.
would generally be looking to the right.
Right.
No, you'd be looking to the
You'll
left
have
because you're
to go
going to the right. So pedestrians are used to people looking both ways before somebody goes forward. You know, I remember the thing in front of Vassar. They built these multiple roundabouts, and I think 2 girls were close to being killed. And one of the reasons was, and it was a big deal up there, they had to redo them, I mean, my mother-in-law lives up there, so it's just all coming back to me why that happened. And one of the reasons drivers get used to looking in one direction and forget that the pedestrians can come at you in any direction.
Right.
When you were doing these studies, I mean, where do the pedestrians, I'm trying to figure out, where are the crosswalks and all this
Well,
stuff?
I didn't highlight them on here, but
Okay.
you can see if you look at the splitter island, each of the splitter islands, it's either at the back of the island or it goes directly through the island. So if there's a car sitting at this yield sign, the pedestrian is actually walking. They're behind them, okay, and they're in front of the car that's behind the guy.
They're between 2 cars.
They're between cars, right?
Yeah.
And but I mean, if you came up to a stop control intersection, you're walking right in front of a car. I mean, it's not that unusual. It really isn't. And it will take a little while for people to get, if they're not familiar with roundabouts.
Yep.
I'll freely admit they're new. I mean, I think the ones you're talking about are up on 55. There's 2 brand new ones up in Poughkeepsie.
Well, they're not that new anymore. This was a few years ago.
Well, then these are new
They've
ones.
added to it.
Raymond
Yeah.
Avenue, the one that
Yeah.
Kristen
Yeah.
Evans was talking about.
It's not that I go up there that often. I just remember, I remember what
issue.
happened up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
The next series of we call them MPT, Maintenance and Protection of Traffic, just gives you an idea of what it takes to actually put one of these things in while you're trying to maintain traffic. Now, it may be a little easier here because we probably could divert traffic if we had to under certain phases. This particular case, a good portion of this roundabout was actually being built on the developer's property. So if you look at, MPT1, we're really just giving them advance notice that something's going to be going on here. And then on the next couple of sheets, there's like 8 stages to this. And if you just flip through them, you can see how you progress from doing the private area. There was a culvert that has to be installed here as well, to the upper right side where now you're doing, the left side of it, you're starting to channelize it. You're maintaining the signal that's there, and you're sliding heads along the signal span wire to align with your new approach alignment. It'd be a little bit different in here because you're using mast arms, so there'd be a little bit more difficult to do. When you have a span wire, you just slide the signal along the span wire. But as you go through, you can see as you progress through, you wind up, it gets developed, and then you build the center island, and then you build the splitter islands at the very end. You try to have traffic avoid this. If there's a way of people going around, going to other roads, it's a good idea. But you're in downtown here, and your speeds are quite low. They will be low. So I think that this can be accomplished with mild disruption in traffic. And the final page identifies what we call a typical section. If you were to take a section right through half of the island, through the apron, through the travelway, out to the sidewalk and the snow shelf. So there's a 30-foot radius island, then you have a 10-foot truck apron, and then you have a travelway of between 20 and 23 feet, followed by a snow shelf of 2 feet, and then a sidewalk of 5 feet beyond that. And it gives the different pavement materials that are used. I'm not sure if the village uses the DOT spec or you have your own spec, but I would recommend this because I know it's worked. It's, you know, worked.
Is this roundabout that you're talking about that's in Newburgh, is this happening now? Is it?
It was supposed to start this summer, but it's starting next April.
Okay.
But there is another one that we did, if you want to see one, that we did it's up in Warwick. It's up near the airport Road, and Shutt Road, 4-way intersection. That roundabout is almost identical in size to what we're proposing here. And that one also had 8 phases of MPT, moving people around. That's almost the hardest part, is figuring out how you're going to build the thing while you keep traffic going. I can make that available, the plans for that available to you, and I know that's being constructed right now.
The one in Warwick?
Warwick, yep. It's in Shutt Road and Airport Road. It's about a mile from the Crystal Run Galleria. Off of 17.
Warwick is what, near Newburgh, or is that?
No, it's west of Newburgh. West of Newburgh.
West of Newburgh.
It's near Middletown.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure.
And that's it.
I have a question, because this has the Fifth Road, the Brandreth, and the Central. How do you determine the right-of-way?
Well, that's oddly enough, when we were looking at redoing the signal, that was a problem, because those two, my recommendation would be to make that one road, Brandreth, one-way northbound.
Oh.
That's what I would recommend.
Traffic people never want to build a one-way road. Surprised me with that one.
No, it's just that it would, whether it's a signal or if it's a roundabout, it would function better if it was one way away from the intersection.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that intersection,
Yeah.
Central and Brandreth. That's a tight, even in the scenario that you show, it looks pretty.
I'm sure
They kind of run it over the edge of that island there that kind of delineates.
Yeah, that would have to be. You can see that would have to be cut
Cut off at
towards
the
the
bottom.
intersection, right?
Yep.
How's parking going to be affected? Parking, how is that going to be
You're
affected?
going to lose. You can actually see the spaces as on the very first drawing. You'll lose. It's awfully light on this. It didn't print quite as dark as I had hoped. But on the Main Street approach, you'll lose 4 spaces. On that is from the west. On the eastern side, Main Street, you'll lose 1, 2, 3, 5 spaces. And on Spring, you'll lose. I don't think you lose any actually on Spring, but because that's a 2-lane approach today.
If Brandreth becomes one way, do we gain any parking on Brandreth?
You would, yes, you would, because you'd wind up.
You park on both sides?
I would park on one side, only because close to the intersection. Because in order for a trucker, particularly a large truck, to negotiate that, they're going to sweep, regardless of whether it's one way or 2-way. I guarantee you, you'll never be able to get
They'll
a
need the space,
semi-tractor trailer up there without encroaching on the approaching lane.
But as you get deeper into the roadway, if it's one way, then
One-way
we
would be-
we might
right.
gain some parking there to make
Do a
up for some of the
14-foot
lost
lane.
spaces?
Yeah, you could just do it, yep.
Yeah, could you kind of figure out how much
Yeah.
parking we could squeeze? Because everybody's going to say,
You're losing
losing the
parking,
parking
right.
spaces downtown. Everybody, that's
We could do that, yes.
Since-
fact or fiction with parking. It's
It sounds like you've got some of these underway. Do you have any experience with having installed roundabouts in communities where the process has gone all the way through? And I'm asking from a public relations standpoint. Sometimes a big change like this is a little uncomfortable for people, and I'm wondering if the public has come out against things, and if the
No.
aftermath is.
Yeah, sorry to say we're not that far. I mean, Warwick will be, we had hoped that this one would have been installed, because this project actually, the one that I gave you with the striping, if you look at the early date on that, it was 2007 was when that started. So it's already 8 years in the making. And so, you know, we had hoped that that one would have been done. And it was supposed to be under construction now, and now it looks like it's, just today I found out it's not going to start until the spring. So I do know the Warwick one is probably near done, because that started in the spring. So that's probably done already. I can check on that.
It was quite fortuitous that Trustee Quesada had sent us some of the links and really pushed for this to be considered here. Treasurer Warren and I had recently attended a Westchester Municipal Officials Dinner where the presentation was from a mayor of Carmel, Indiana, where he led the effort to install many, many, many roundabouts. And it was I guess he took some public ribbing for it, but has really transformed their transportation there. So we'll certainly look to other communities' experience if we want to move forward with this.
Yeah, the state is where they see an opportunity. Like we have another one that we're right in the design right now in Newcastle, at Roaring Brook Road and Route 117, up near Reader's Digest. That T intersection. Right now, we're in the middle of actually just beginning the design of that. We just met with the state today. Yesterday, on that. And a major issue was the pedestrians.
Yeah.
Because the school's just up the road.
Right.
You know, so, but it's something to say, when we first proposed it to the state, they're some of the officials, their eyes lit right up, because they see, one, I don't have to maintain a signal there anymore. And as it turns out, the town of Newcastle already has the maintenance jurisdiction for snow removal. So the state is like basically out of the intersection at that point.
How does this, I think this is Captain Craven's first time being aware of this consideration at all, and so we haven't reached out to anybody in our traffic enforcement side. Is there any experience to draw on that you're familiar with how this
Only
impacts?
that there's fewer accidents,
Well, we like
fewer
that.
severe accidents.
Do you have any questions at the moment, Captain Craven, that come to mind on this?
I know that traffic calming is an issue here. I know that
They're all the rage. They're all the rage in New York now, I guess. So you guess that?
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank Paul Frioli for taking actually the time. I was actually the person who sent out some additional information because I had some questions. I missed the presentation that you guys did once back over the summer in regards to sign that was almost on the way, 5-point intersection. I had a couple questions. Actually, some of them were answered in regards to parking, how much we're losing. The major question I guess I have, and since that you have design and one of them is in process of construction, what are we talking about money-wise? And what's the cost estimates on this project?
We didn't do cost estimates yet.
But in something similar, because we were talking about...
The one in Warwick was about 4.5. That was about 4.5. There was a lot of grading on that one, though. We had to raise, Airport Road comes, which is, if you go along 84, you'll see the airport. It's where they have a lot of gliders. And so it's called Würzburg Airport. That road is relatively flat, and then it comes up to the intersection today at a relatively steep grade, but the issue was a lot of the gliders are towed behind cars with the wings folded, and so there was a concern about coming up that quickly. And then when you enter one of these roundabouts, you want to be at about between 2% and 4%. You don't want to be. That one is not perfectly flat. It has a grade across the roundabout of about 2% from one side to the other. Ideally, it would be flat, and you'd grade it out towards the curb so water runs off the outside. That's what ideally you'd like to do. In that case, we had a lot of grading. We had to bring the airport road up and create a platform before you got to the intersection. So there was a good deal of work in getting the grade changed. I believe that I can look up the numbers, but I think there was about 4.5.
Because what the work session that the presentation was introduced a couple months back, if the estimate was close to $500,000.
Well, the signal alone
Yeah,
was probably
which is correct.
150,000.
So
Signal loans.
the idea with that, it's at $500,000 just for now. The proposing of this roundabout, the concept of this, how much do you think? Is it going to be a lot less, obviously, because of the light traffic?
Yeah, well, the thing is that you have, we tried to save as much, for example, on the spring central corner. We basically don't touch that. In fact, we bring the curb out a little bit. We cut back the point between Main and Spring. We cut that back a little bit. Of course, we do invade the park area, so that's a significant change. On Main Street coming westbound, again, we bring the curb out, but we were doing that before anyway, under the tightening up the intersection plan. So it's hard to say. You're going to have it depends on what utilities are over here in the park.
But it's going to be...
if you have a transformer that's buried there, that stuff...
And I don't want to hold you to a number, but safe to say that it's going to be probably half what it was before, or what it was estimate?
I would say probably 2/3, maybe. Probably around 2/3. I would guess it's going to be less, because the signal alone is at 100.5.
Correct.
So,
So I think there is some, if you look saying, is there going to be savings doing this versus the other way? I would say just, probably yes in terms of the actual construction. Going forward, in terms of maintenance, it's going to be less expensive as well, because you won't have the signal to maintain.
so it would be less expensive to create, less expensive to maintain. It would reduce traffic accidents, and it would improve the flow of traffic.
Definitely improve the flow.
So why wouldn't we do this?
But hold
Well,
on.
even if it was the same amount, for those same reasons, you should still do it, because it does meter the traffic, and it's a traffic calming measure. There's lower maintenance, because you don't have to maintain a signal. And I think it happens to be aesthetically a lot nicer.
And how long do you predict it'll take to do this?
The actual construction?
Well, it has to be done in phases, right? That's the
Yeah,
challenge.
it would probably take half a year.
There's on Oregon Road in the town of Cortland, actually, as you approach the Putnam County border, there's actually a roundabout that may be a little smaller than what will be at this intersection, but it has the 5th Street intersection. And I think if the board gets a chance, maybe you may want to just go up there, take a look at that, because it will give you a pretty good idea of the design and how the like stamp brick, goes right into the bigger circle, the landscape area. I think, and also for traffic, it reduces the amount of the exhausts.
The emissions.
The emissions. Thank you. Yeah, the cars that cars
Sitting vehicles that are just exhausting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a few other advantages to that. So
I guess this question is more towards the board itself. When I worked down last time, started looking into this whole thing, I was aware that we are going to be taking away some property, which is our Market Square area. Farmers Market is located on Saturdays, and all these events stuff happening. I was aware also, I am aware of the RFP that is coming at some point. So the board okay reducing the amount of property that is there right now, or something with this instead? I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, it's just a different, it's a slightly modified shape. And it's not
Yeah.
like we've got a contract with somebody and they had a square footage of
Yeah.
property that
It's
they
not a
were
business that's
anticipating.
sitting there and you're hurting their storefront or
Right.
anything.
I wasn't sure, I just wanted to.
It's
Yeah, I mean,
still, it's going to have a similar feeling of space, I think. I don't know if
Well,
I'm overstating. Yes,
landscaped correctly, it might look better, so.
right. Paul, did you want to add to that?
I didn't want to add to that comment.
Okay.
I just want to summarize status of his existing agreement with the village and the purchase order that we have created. We went ahead and executed an hourly rate agreement with him to study this concept plan, and then possibly take the concept plan a little further if you guys were still undecided. I thank you for a pretty comprehensive presentation. It was even more than I expected. But eventually that hourly sum will run out, and we're going to have to decide how to proceed with his open PO. Do we redefine his scope and we present contract documents for Rotary, or do we go to the traditional intersection? And for what it's worth, I was a little hesitant myself, but as your engineer and someone who also sits through like all Dana White's presentation there, and every picture of the intersection from like 18 whatever and 1910, 1930, 1940 all look the same, and then like when she does one next year, everybody's going, what? You know, so you know, from that perspective, it could be an exciting project. So should you decide to go that way, we're going to have to redefine his contract. I'll coordinate that with Tom and get the PO adjusted, and we'll go from there.
And the one thing, actually, if I may, also, this is one of the projects that we are applying for the CDBG funding for the handicap accessibility portion of it. So I think that, you know, the application is actually due on this Friday. It has to go out because it's a paper application this year. So I will need a little bit of direction as to how we're going to do this. So this way, because that could have an impact on how the amount of funding that we're going to be requesting, because the intersection, the number of curbs that we're going to be cutting is actually going to be different from the initial one that was proposed, if I remember correctly. So,
Right, sir.
right.
Wow, okay. I didn't think we had to kind of decide anything in the next 5 minutes, but
No, I'm saying, but if I could just have, have at least some, if you're going to consider this seriously, then I will go with the premise that we're going to go with this particular possibility. And then.
What's the difference in the number? So is it like 6 cuts versus 4? Like, what's the
Yeah,
difference?
that's what I was going to ask. What's the
Talk to
difference?
village engineer tomorrow to see, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go over some of the details of the application and get a little more familiar with it, but we'll work through that.
the one thing I was going to say, before I realized that there is a sense of urgency for us to get a sense of the board on this, is, you know, that other departments who would be impacted, like the fire department, DPW has obviously been able to weigh in on this through Paul, but the police department hasn't had a lot of opportunity to weigh in on this. And so before we commit to moving forward, I feel like we should hear from some of the other
Yeah, I can make a point of
professionals in the
taking this
village.
concept to, again, we meet routinely with Lieutenant Montague, and I'm sure he can run it up the ladder to get his necessary endorsements, and I can also sit with the chiefs, the fire chiefs, and get their comments or endorsement.
And Paul, you're okay with the whole snow plowing thing come winter and how that all works? Because, you know, this is the main track for the racers to the train station every morning.
I know. And
they've got it all timed.
That's, you know, it's snow plowing and the subsequent removal from an area like this is always going to be an issue. But we were going to have the same issues with the redesign on the intersection because of all the bump outs that we were doing to afford for easier pedestrian. So, I mean, it's something that we'll adapt just like everybody else will adapt if we go about. But, you know, with regard to that snow removal and maintenance, et cetera, I mean, the decrease in the maintenance that we have on all the instrumentation, because that's DPW, and it's been pretty significant dollars, either when a contractor has hit the instrumentation lines or the box has been hit by a truck, the mast arms, you know, are you know,
Power outages.
And it's and it becomes an overtime issue because we have to sit there when the lights are out, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the operating savings is more than just the replacement of the bulbs on the traffic signals. And I could make that as detailed of a presentation as you'd like, but I think it's safe to say that it's going to be significant.
Wow. Yes, Trustee Cobbin.
Yeah, just, you know, we don't have to talk about it too much longer, but anecdotally, you know, I spent some time in Italy recently, and there's a total absence of any traffic lights there, pretty much exclusively roundabouts, especially in in the more rural areas. But even in large highways, like significant 3-lane highways, they have 3-lane roundabouts. So it's not unheard of, and there is some time to adapt. But I think we are talking about a place that's our center of our town, and I think it'll actually create some character to our village, the center of our village. So certainly in concept, I'm certainly in favor of considering this. I'm a little concerned about the issue that the manager brings up around the timing of requests for grants and stuff like that. So, but I hope we could get some more consensus and some more input from, as the mayor said, from other groups that would have want to weigh in and perhaps have possible concerns. So.
Well, I'll see if I could sit with the managers as early as tomorrow and see if we could submit this grant generic enough to cover both entities, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Both concepts, rather.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just talking about curve cuts, in regards to the ADA access, I mean, no matter if we 20 or if we 10. I mean, I'm concept. Thank you.
Wow. So this, the point that you made about looking at this intersection historically for the last couple hundred years in Ossining, and to think about radically changing the way that looks is going to be a little disconcerting and jarring to some people, and exciting and revolutionary in a positive way for some people. So presenting new opportunities for how to really change the look of our village. So thank you very much for putting all this work together and really helping us imagine what it could be, and really consider it thoroughly. We look forward to hearing about the feedback from the other departments.
So if I may summarize then, we're just
Please.
going to put in a holding pattern then for right now to let everybody digest what was presented this evening. I will reach out for police and fire, and I'll take my findings back to the manager's office, and also work with him with his grant application. And at that point, I'm sure he'll put together some type of summary to you all and ask for a consensus and a decision, because I don't think we want to wait till another work session or another month from now to proceed with contract documents, because I think it was still the intent, regardless of which way we go, is to design this for public bidding this winter, with a possible construction commencement in the summer when the traffic's a little lower going to the station and with the school buses, et cetera. Because that would be the ideal time, I think, to mobilize and commence with upsetting the downtown.
And would somebody be able to call those other two towns? It's sort of wondering why it takes 10 years for a project to get off. So
You got to step up to the mic so we can hear you.
That project wasn't the roundabout. That project was, I think, it handed over to like 2 or 3 different developers along the way. And it was a very complex problem.
But regardless, I think it's a phone call, so we could just find out. There might have been some consumer issues that we're not aware of. There might have been bad press releases that went out and people didn't understand what was happening and got all upset. I mean, we don't know. So it's just probably a couple of phone calls, right, to just figure out in those towns what went on.
If, maybe Paul would like to give a call to Dick McGooey. Hauser, that's all he's the town engineer for Warwick, for the one that we did in Warwick. And I'm trying to remember who the consultant engineer was that.
That's fine.
One more thing. The reason we bought that particular project here wasn't so much the locale, it was because it had the 5-point component,
right,
which was, very, very much in kind with what we have, that 5-point component. And it's nice that, everybody saw the same concern coming out of, I think it was over here, the Brandreth exchange. So it's something that we'll talk about, and all the issues will be vetted out during the design process, and, go from there.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, really good.
Trustee Codman just had an excellent suggestion. Next week, we're going to be having our work session at the library talking about the future of downtown and Market Square. Would it be possible for you to provide us with a brief PowerPoint sort of summarizing the concept that we're moving forward with on this?
Wednesday? Is it Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday. the public community
Yeah,
meeting
well,
at the
I guess we're looking
library.
to get these, if we could get these documents, some of these basic documents converted into a power.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
your,
if you
in your
could have
pocket?
it
Yeah.
on a-
Okay.
That,
Hey,
Yeah,
that's-
don't you
that
have
would
it
be
on a
great.
CAD?
I'm coming back from out of town that evening. I don't know if I'll be back time for the work
Well, you
session,
don't-
but I
I
get.
mean,
Yeah,
we can-
Peter can make the presentation, so.
Peter, are you available next Wednesday, the 28th?
Yeah,
I'll let you know, I'll call.
we'll figure
We'll
something
figure
out.
something out so that we can share the concept, even, not in this much detail, obviously, with the public, but to let folks know that as we're considering the future of Market Square area, that this is where our thinking is at right now.
Maybe I coordinate something with manager's office and Craig to take one of the PDFs and at least introduce it on the village webpage too.
That'll be great.
Thank you. Wow. Okay.
Okay. Did you want this back?
Yep. May I?
Okay.
Annie's keeping one copy.
Could have done that after we turned the camera off. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Paul.
But we would like to do that about a lot of things in our life.
Can I keep this? Okay. All right. So, with that, are we all set?
Yes.
Okay, we're all set. Okay, then thank you very much for joining us for the. Oh yeah, do we need a motion to adjourn the public work session? Thank you.
So move.
Second.
On the board, Madam Clerk. Aye. Thank you very much for joining us for a very interesting meeting. Please remember to join us next Wednesday, October 28th, at the Ossining Public Library in the Bedars Theater, where we will be talking a little bit more about what we just discussed, as well as what the community's thoughts are about Ossining and downtown and the changing face of our downtown. Thank you very much.